Hello guys, this is Krimstuts and welcome to my Ambient Occlusion tutorial. And in this tutorial I will be covering on how to render out Ambient Occlusion itself as a render and also showing what uses you can have for it as well. So as an example, if you have a model and you just want to show it off without a texture, what you can do is render out the Ambient Occlusion and it will look very nice instead of having the default gray material or the gray lambert on it and not really showing any shadows. So, and another way what you can do as well is if you are making a product and you render out the diffuse specular colors and the lighting and everything, what you can do is secondary image of ambient occlusion. You can use blending modes in Photoshop to overlay or soft light and to make the shadows and the image pop a little bit more as well. It's quite subtle, but it looks very nice. So to begin, what I have here is a model of a bus stop, and what we want to do first is go and make sure our mental ray is on. So go to Window, Settings and Preferences, Plugin Manager, and what you want to find here is, let me just find it myself. Okay, Maya TOMR, and make sure that is loaded, and you can select auto load as well so it also loads when Maya starts. So we can close that once we selected it, and now we go to our display render settings, select mental ray in the render using mental ray, so it should be Maya software for default. Just make sure that's a mental ray, and I will have mine on 1080p from the presets, so HD 1080. You can select whatever resolution you like, and I will just go to quality and make sure that that is production. And another thing we can use is final gathering in indirect lighting to make it look a little bit more nice as well. So we'll just leave that unticked for now. So as you can see, I have a camera in my scene, and what that is for is if you go to the camera, so go to Panels, Perspective, Camera, we have this resolution gate on, and this is what the camera sees, and I'll show you why it's important to have the camera right for things like this. So for example, if we render out the colors, the textures of the bus stop, and then we accidentally move this perspective view and render out the ambient occlusion, the images won't match. So I will show you how to stop that from happening by doing this. So make a camera, and what you want to go and do is go to Panels, Perspective, look through the camera, and I have camera 2 right here. Yours should be camera 1, and then just move it back, just use it like the perspective view, and you want to find the best position for it. And what you want to do after that is go back to the perspective view, make sure the camera is selected, and click 1 on your time frame and press S on the keyboard. And what that does is keys the camera into the timeline. So for example, if I go to camera 2 right here and accidentally move it by accident, like that, and now it's out of position, and we don't want it to be out of position. So what we do is select one of the numbers in the time frame, and it goes back to its position because we keyed it on the first frame, like so. Okay, so I'll just go back to my perspective view. I will delete my camera, and what we want to do is make a backdrop. So to do that, I'm just going to use a polyplane like this, and the position of it, I want this block to show just a little bit, not too much. So I'll just drag it like so. That looks fine. And for the polyplane, what you want to go and do is go to the channel box and the subdivision's height, bring it up to around 10. Okay, now select the last edge and hit B on your keyboard. So now we have this thing come up. So we will just go to the tool settings, and my fall off radius is on 42, which is fine for me, but yours might be quite low, so just bring it up until it's around so it looks like this, so halfway. And what you want to do is just bring this up, rotate it a little bit so it curves nicely, like so. I'm going to bring it up quite far, something like this, and just drag it back as well a little bit more, like so. And from what we can do as well is select the width and hit B to turn that off. Select the width and bring this back a little bit so this part is flat. And another thing we want to do is just bring this out quite far as well. So if I look through my camera now and make sure your resolution gate is on, it's just a little bit easier to see what you will see inside the render. So as you can see, I have empty space right here, and we don't want that. We want this plane to cover everything. So what I will do is go back to my perspective view and just bring this all the way up like that. Go back to my camera, and now it covers everything apart from the bottom as well. So I'm just going to make sure that's dragged out a little bit more as well. Here we go. Okay, that's fine. And what we do now is just go to Hypershade, Window, Render and Editors, Hypershade. And we want to find Surface Shader. So just click your middle mouse and drag it into your work area. And another thing we want to find is the Ambient Occlusion. So I'm just going to type OCC, and now we have all these Ambient Occlusion shaders. And we just want to select the first one, which is MIB AMB Occlusion. Drag that into the work area. And hold down Control, hold down your middle mouse button, click the Ambient Occlusion with the middle mouse button, and drag it onto the surface shader so you have a little arrow connecting them like this. And if I double click the Ambient Occlusion, it will bring it up in the attribute editor. And right now we have 16 samples. 16 samples is a bit too weak, and I will show you how it looks like. So if we, oops, not render it, not yet. What we want to do is apply the Ambient Occlusion to everything. So I'm just going to select every object in the scene, right click my mouse button, go to Assign Existing Materials, and you should have Surface Shader 1. For me it will be Surface Shader 2 because I already have one active in the scene. And I will render it out. This shouldn't take that long for me. But as you can see, all this noise and grain, it's a bit too much and we don't want to see that. So to fix it, you bring up the raise on the Ambient Occlusion. So I'm just going to go back to my Hypershade right here. Double click the Ambient Occlusion and bring the raise up to say 60. And now let's see how that looks. As you can see, most of the grain is eliminated, and you still have some noise and grain left, but it's not too bad. So it depends on how powerful your computer is, of course, on how long this will take to render out. For me, I have good hardware, so what I can do is turn up to 256. And another thing what I will do as well is I will go to my rendering editor and I will turn final gathering on. Now, when I render this out, this will take quite a while, maybe a minute for me, so I'll just start rendering it right now, and I will just pause the video and show you how it will look like. Oh, and just before that, as you can see the final gathering, all this pixelation, don't worry about that. Once it renders, it will look perfect. So here we go, guys. As you can see, the render looks very nice now, and there's barely any visible grain. Maybe you can see some here, but that doesn't really matter. And the shadows are nice and soft, and it looks great. So what we can do next is we can save the image. I already have mine opened in Photoshop, so go to File, Save Image, and select the JPEG or PNG or whatever you want. So here we are in Photoshop, guys, and as you can see, I have the bus stop rendered out with the textures, and I also have my ambient occlusion layer right here on top of that. So if we just make it visible, here's the ambient occlusion layer, and maybe try put it on overlay, and it looks a bit too intense. Let me just fit that to screen, maybe zoom in a little bit more. Oops, maybe you could just go to actual pixels. Here you go. And if it looks a bit too intense like that, what you can do is just turn the opacity down to around 50%. So as you can see, the difference is quite great with the overlay layer. It highlights the shadows a lot more underneath the seat, and some shadows here, and also the shadows underneath the bus stop itself as well. And I think it makes the glass stand out a little more as well, as you can see. The glass is almost see-through completely. Of course, if you're making another object with glass, you'll have the things in the reflection. I don't really have much. As you can see, the reflection is just there. But it makes it look much better. But what I like to do is I like to go to soft light and maybe turn it up to around 70 opacity. So the difference is not that big, maybe 60. But you can still see the shadows pop a lot more, and this is good when you have a product which will be a still image. You can do something like this as well. So yeah, guys, I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial, and of course like and subscribe, share the video, and have a great day.